Ladies and mostly gentlemen, we have a fantastic episode today, and I hope that you are having a day as good as mine. We get to play with toys today, which is my favorite thing to do, to pretend that I am not actually working. Today's video is going to be on the Element RC Enduro, and I am installing the aftermarket overdrive in the transmission. So I don't know about you, but I am having a fabulous day today. Part of it is that through the magic of internet trickery, I have actually taken 4 weeks off of videos and I have come back so refreshed and ready to play with toys. I mean, work on these very serious scale vehicles. So I have, for the first time ever, put down a work surface so I don't run my scrim for a change. And this is, I couldn't even tell you where to get this from, NL Customs or something like this work surface. They actually went out of business and I bought a ton of these aluminized work surfaces from them. But we also have a magnetic screw catcher from Cow RC today, which I'll be using to throw my screws in, and hopefully they won't bounce into oblivion, which usually that's what happens to me when I drop something. It bounces into oblivion. But today, as you can see in this little kit that came with the Element RC, they provided some aftermarket gears for more overdrive in the transmission. If you're not familiar with it, it comes with about 6% stock, and this allows us to go to 12% overdrive in the transmission. They also included a full-size battery tray, which is super handy if you're running huge packs. All right, maybe not as huge as this pack, but slightly smaller, normally sized huge packs, 5,000 milliamp hour size, sort of dealy bobs, and a couple of extra servo horns, a different mount if you wanted to use, I'm guessing, maybe like an SUV body on it, some servo horns, which I would break right away because they're made of plastic, an extra screw, probably for our servo, as well as 3, count them, 1, 2, 3 extra ball ends in this kit that they sent. I guess it's technically an RTR. What do you think? Can I call this thing a kit? Is that okay with y'all? All right, so we're gonna get down to it. And first, of course, we have to take off the body, which I love this body, by the way. Really like this release from Element RC. I hear that they're going to be coming out with a new one soon. I wonder if it is simply a different body. For safety's sake, we take out the battery, set that guy aside, hopefully in a non-flammable spot. And now what we need to do is we need to take this transmission out. Since this transmission pretty much bolts in the same way as the old axial transmissions, we basically have 2 choices. We can either unbolt the transmission from the skid plate, or we can drop the entire skid plate down. Now, since I am intending on not replacing the motor today, but actually taking apart the transmission, what I'm going to do is unbolt the transmission from our skid plate. And to do that, we will need some Allen wrenches, probably 2mm. Let's take a guess. What is this guy? 2mm? Hey, it fits. It's almost like I've done this before. So now we just montage 4 screws coming out. We should also be very careful of where we put our screws so that we don't put the wrong screws back into our transmission and run them into our gears. I've never done that before. If y'all watched my Wraith video, you saw that that's exactly what I did. So let's see here. We've got short screws by the edge, and we have long screws in the center. So what I'm going to do is try to keep the vehicle in the same direction so that when I take it apart and put it back together, I will know how it goes. All right, so unbolt that guy, do the bullet plugs, little Yankee yank. All right, you should never ever pull plugs by the wires. And we'll just set this aside slightly. So pretty cool here. They've got these aluminized sliding shafts on the inside of our other sliding shafts. That's kind of cool, because usually this is the part that twists on the shaft. So that's pretty neat. I don't know if these are compatible with axial shafts. Would be interesting to find that out. So I want to do the overdrive kit. We need to stay on task and remember to take this apart. So just looking at this transmission, it is wider than the original Stealth style transmission, and you can see the the mounting plate here, and you can see the extra width, and that's because they actually use 6 gears in this transmission, or let's see, well, yeah, we'll see when we get inside, but it's essentially a clone of the original 6-gear Stealth transmission, which is pretty sweet that that's what they did in an effort to get overdrive. And now we just need to find the right way to take it apart. I'm going to keep these outputs on there and see what happens when I take it apart. It may not come apart, but it might. So now we just need to unscrew it. And you know what? I think my handy dandy DeWalt is going to help greatly. 1. 2. 3. 4. Got some long screws up there. 4 and 5. So we have 5 screws in the transmission that might allow it to come apart. Oh, look at that. And indeed, yeah. So let's just look at this arrangement here. What we seem to have is a top shaft that drives 2 gears, and we have 2 gears on our center shaft. I'll just take this apart so we can see a little better. As much as I can, at least. All right, so these are the idler gears in the center of our transmission. Got a bearing on each side. We still have a bearing located in there. And interesting to note, they did use rubber shielded bearings. I think you really don't need those inside the transmission because, it's shielded from things by the transmission itself. But I digress. And then they have the lower gear and a bearing so that the other lower gear can ride on it. So it turns independently from the front side lower gear, however we want to call it. So my assumption, I should probably read the instructions before I go replacing this gear, but my assumption is that this side is going to be the gears that we replace. But I'm going to actually crack open my instructions so I don't do this wrong and negate my overdrive. Ha ha ha, look at that. They included such a nice owner's manual. So let's see here. Electronics gearbox, page 7. Wasn't that nice of them to have a table of contents? I can't actually tell you that I've seen another one with a table of contents in it. So, neat. All right. Yes, gearbox, I see. All right. So, as you can see on page 7, as indicated in our table of contents, our gearbox is this right there. So, we're looking at the overdrive option. That's what we're going to be installing right there. And it tells me that, let's see here, we want to see what the stock gears are. Do they tell us what the stock gears are? Idler 28. Idler 27. So we got the 28 and the 27. Our stock 52 and 53. Yeah. Okay, so it says right there, I should have read fully, overdrive option stock. So that's the normal overdrive option. So what I am going to be doing is, I suppose, looking at these very carefully and seeing if they have any numbers printed on them to give me an indication of which way it goes. Or maybe there's another page in this catalog. So our 27 gets replaced. This one is our 27. We will set that aside, and it gets replaced by the 26. All right, yeah, and maybe you can see the size difference on these. We'll put it down on the surface. And this one is 2 teeth smaller now, just enough. All right, hey, and on the inside of these, they actually do have it printed. So 2852, that is not the one we were replacing. We are replacing this gear. So I do have to take the cross pin out of this gear. It appears to be stainless. And if it's not, then it is a well-plated steel. All right, so now that we've taken this output shaft off of our transmission, we slide the gear out. And it is imperative that you use a nice smooth voice when you slide the gear out. So here is what we are going to be replacing. I'll go ahead and slide the ball bearing off, put it where it belongs, inside the other gear. And while we're talking about gears, you may notice that these are plastic. These are plastic gears, and on top of that, they have relief cuts in them. I guess for a little bit of weight savings, although I don't suppose that that's very important for something so small and light. And I have certainly heard some people having reservations, to say the least, about plastic gears. But, you know, I've honestly had no problems with plastic gears over the years as long as they are well designed and good plastics. And I can tell you just from handling these gears that it is a high nylon content. Probably a fiber reinforced. Yeah, fiber reinforced plastic. I don't think I'll have any problems in this unless I start throwing dumb brushless in it. Anything probably 2700 kV and below with a standard size rotor. So 15 millimeter long stack, like the stubby, Polar Pro stubby, essentially. A Castle Creation slate, Tekin Rock 412. Any of those are going to be mild enough when you stay below like 2800 kV that you shouldn't break gears as long as you're not being real dumb with your driving. Maybe we should say inconsiderate driving, right? But once you go faster than that, you get so much wheel speed and so much power produced, like a 3500 or 3300 stubby Polar Pro, or a 3500 standard, which is a very large stator. It would be equivalent to a Tekin Rock 412 HD or a Castle 1410, big boy sort of motor. Those are where you start getting yourself into trouble easily. All that wheel speed, it adds up. All right, so just making sure we're doing this right. Yes, that is the matching gear. Now, the question is there a left or a right? It doesn't appear so. There's no recess to the gear. It looks like they do have the threads starting a little easier on this side. You can't really see it, but there's a teeny little chamfer to this hole. Teeniest little chamfer, and that'll just make the threads easier to start. So I'm gonna thread it into that side. And we reverse our process. 1.5 millimeter driver for these tiny little screws. I'm kind of sad that we don't need a #1 Phillips screwdriver today. What's your favorite screwdriver size? I should note that I'm also using Vanquish drivers today. Anybody have those? Have you liked them? Have you broke them? Sometimes, in an effort to get drivers nice and hard so the tips don't wear out fast, they get over-hardened a little bit, and the smaller sizes, such as this 1.5 millimeter, may be slightly prone to breaking. I have not done it so far. Maybe you have. Of course, MIP drivers, the pretty much pinnacle of quality, they are also known to break, especially with the 1.5 millimeter, because they're nice and hard, but that sometimes causes them to break as well. There's always an upside and a downside to having hard tool tips. All right, we want to make sure that we don't strip out the resin. That is the one downside to plastic gears. Kind of easy to strip out your threads in them if you're not careful. So we want to go snug and no more. Okay, maybe just a little more. And normally I would chuck this sucker up in my driver, but you know, trying to not strip out the gears and all, I only have one of them here. Go, 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 go. You ever put together your RC for so many hours that you get carpal tunnel? I did about a decade ago when I was spending an average of 40 hours a week wrenching on my rigs. Started getting carpal tunnel from this. Had to take it easy for a while and let my employees do the work. That's when I started paying my employees to work on my rigs. And I never looked back. Actually, I did look back with a lot of fondness. All right, so we got the boring part done. Who am I kidding? There's no boring parts to playing with toys. I mean, these super scale, not toy vehicles. I've worked myself into a corner. I don't know how to describe them now. Don't hate me, YouTube. All right, so now we're gonna put the output back onto the transmission with these tiny little bolts. There we go. We got to line everything up, you know, where the camera can't see it. There we go. Now we can show you. Got to line everything back up. And then we're going to use our 2mm. No, this is not the time to pull out the DeWalt. There we are. Snug her down a little bit. I don't sound like a hick at all when I talk like that. But I am indeed probably a hick. How about yourself? Would you consider yourself a hick? Maybe a redneck. And I am very disappointed in myself because I'm putting this back together dry. I don't seem to have any lubricant around here unless I scavenge some from the old gears. Or hey, they put a little bit too much and it's inside the gearbox. We really don't need much. So, being the completely unprepared person that I am whenever it comes to having lubricated gears, of all things, I'm just gonna steal a little bit. And what I need is a knife. Wait, that's not a knife. I wish I had a big old knife to pull out. So, scissors it is. We're scissoring. We're scissoring. Just a little, just enough. Honestly, we really don't need it since it's nylon gears. More than likely they're impregnated with some sort of lubricating properties. But better safe than sorry. Just a little bit, just enough. What does the smell of grease remind you of? It kind of reminds me of horses. It smells like they boiled down a horse for this grease. I'm sure it was nothing fancy. No fancy horses. Oh, hey, look at there. All right, back to it. No. Yes. No, yes. Are you a Midwesterner? Do you reply with, yeah, no, yeah? Do you know what I mean when I say, no, yeah, no? No, no, yeah, yeah, no. All right, so now we ease it back together. It spins smoothly. I think we have a winner. All right, so We put our screws back in. 1 screw, 2 screws, 3 screws, 4 screws, 5 screws. We did find all of the screws from before, if you remember. There were 5 screws. All right, easy there, easy there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So we don't want to snug it up, just get them, whoa, get them there. Right to the, whoo, whoo. All right, now we do the safe thing and we snug it up with our hand tools the final little bit. That one seems to have snugged up a little more than it should have. Maybe using the power driver isn't a good idea in plastics. What do you think? I think it'll be just fine. We're going to ignore that screw. Oh, it's great. Feels great now. I've got no complaints. Just going to go through and just a teeny tiny bit more. All right. So now we should have our overdrive. That wasn't too painful. It's only 4 screws on this vehicle. So now we get our sliding shafts. We insert those sliding shafts gingerly. And remember, short screws on the outside, long screws on the inside. And we line up the hole. Then I usually go to the diagonal just to make it a little easier for those last screws. Make sure everything lines up evenly. All right, now we have it all back together, and I am pretty sure that I did it correctly, because if I remember, memory, the motor was in front. So if I installed a 550 motor, it might hit the battery tray. I do remember that much, I think. Now we just need to triple check everything. And I already got the battery in. I'm ahead of myself. Now, she should go forwards when I go forwards. Yay! And let's see if we have more overdrive. It'll be a little hard to tell, but I can tell. The front tires are definitely spinning faster than the rear. Oh yeah. All right, we did it. We got the overdrive installed into the rig. It is installed properly, and obviously I do have more overdrive in the front now than I used to. And I can't wait to get it out on the rocks. However, we are short on time today, so we're going to cover that in the next episode. But has anybody else installed this overdrive in their rigs, and what did you think about it? Was it enough overdrive for you? Was it just enough overdrive for you, or would you like way more, or maybe way less overdrive in your rig? I tend to like about 30% overdrive in my competitive rigs, but I am really interested to see what 12% does in a general trail rig where I'm going to be walking behind it for long periods of time, and maybe I don't want to be burning up the batteries as fast as a high amount of overdrive would do. So I am pretty excited to go test this thing out, but unfortunately we have run out of time for today. So I thank you for joining me. If you do have any other questions about this rig, about life in general, where do babies come from? I can help you out with that. Post down below in the comments, give us a big ol' like, and we will see you next time.